United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for coming this evening. Go ahead and call the roll, please.
Trustee Spurling.
Here.
Trustee Lee.
Here.
Trustee Hines.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Here.
Trustee Bond.
Here.
And we're all here this evening. Under public participation, public comment portion, this is a 2-minute opportunity for any member of the public that's here this evening to address the board. If there is anybody, you can step up to the podium and sign in. All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the consent agenda. I'll read off the items and then entertain a motion. A minutes of the village board meeting of July 28th, the building report for July of 2014, accounts payable through August 5th, 2014, cancellation of the August 19th committee of the whole meeting, and appointment by the village president of Donna Tebow of 523 South River Street to Historic Preservation Commission for a term from today through May 31st of 2017. And if there are no comments or questions, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
So move.
Second?
Moved and second. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Hines.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yep. And that carries 6-0. Thank you. Moving on to items for separate action, we have item A, which is ordinance 1627, amending the village code, chapter 3, sections 3 through 9, to create a Class G liquor license for Taco Madre, and this would be waiver of the first and passage on the second reading. And with that, I'll turn it over to Chief of Police Dan Myers.
Thank you very much. Currently, the owner came in last week and his fingerprints have been submitted to the state. Also, his background is clear. The only thing we're waiting for is the results from the state of Illinois. So at this time, I believe we can recommend a liquor license for him. The state of Illinois and the village of Mendota have licenses already for him, and they're still current and active. And there's nothing on either one of those records.
Are there any questions of the chief?
Could our adoption be subject to final approval by the state, or would that make sense?
Yes and no. I mean, we can make anything subject to that. At the same time, remember, you're not approving his application. You're approving the expansion of the number of liquor licenses, so it is a little different. If something came back negative at the tail end, he wouldn't get the license, and then we'd rush back in here to get you guys to remove the license.
Okay.
Is the delay here on the state, or was this delay on the application?
The, after he came 2 weeks ago, it did take him a little while to come to the PD. I believe it was Thursday he was in, Wednesday or Thursday?
I think it was Thursday.
Thursday.
So we've done our portion of the background check. We're just waiting on the fingerprint check from the state.
Steve, maybe you can highlight, what's the worst-case scenario? If we create a liquor license and then, let's say he doesn't, they're not qualified to get one then, and we have one available. What's our exposure?
Then someone potentially could apply for it, and in that intervening period of time, which would be basically till your next meeting, someone could become entitled to it. That doesn't mean they get it automatically, but it means you have much less power to deny them as you currently do. But just in the circumstances where he already has a state liquor license and a local license up in
Mendota?
Mendota, the likelihood of him not getting it is virtually zero.
Correct,
Right.
It's really just a matter of the fingerprints coming back to be his.
correct.
How does the board feel about issuing this today or holding off?
No problem.
I'm fine with it
Yeah,
today.
I'm fine.
If there are any other questions, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve?
By
Second.
Marisak, second by Trustee Hines. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Hines.
Yay.
And that
Trustee
carries.
Youngerman?
Sorry,
Yes.
trustee.
That was so good.
That's okay. I'm at this meeting
I'd be
today.
one every day, you know.
Steve gets the vote on the first one.
Gotcha.
All right, that carries 6-0, 5 or 6-0, depending on how you look at it. Moving on, item B, which is the boundary agreement that we discussed last month with the Village of Sugar Grove. And with that, I'll ask Director Young for update if you have one.
Thank you very much. This is a agreement that's very similar to the previous boundary agreement between the two municipalities. It essentially establishes Jericho Road, Route 47, and then baseline west of Route 47 as the boundary between the two communities. Both communities have reviewed each other's land use plans, and we're in good shape from that standpoint, so we'd ask that the board approve this agreement.
You say the Village of Sugar Grove has approved the
Sorry,
agreement
yes,
previously.
Thank you. The Village of Sugar Grove approved this same exact agreement last week.
Excellent. Any questions?
Just one quick, I have no problem with the agreement because it's the same we've had before, but why did last time we have a short one and this time we got a 20-year one?
I really can't answer why the last one was for only 15 years. I don't know why. The standard agreements between most communities are for 20 years, and it's been a long established boundary, so I don't see any problem with going with 20 years.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second by Trustee Bond. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yep.
Trustee Heinz.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
And that carries 6-0. Item C this evening, which is the intergovernmental agreement with Kane County for the village's $70,000 contribution to the Montgomery Road Corridor Phase 1 study. And with that, I'll ask Director Pubens for a summary.
Thank you, President Brawley. As you know, Kane County Division of Transportation has entered into an agreement with HDR Engineering to begin the Phase 1 engineering study for Montgomery Road between Route 25 and Hill Avenue. So it's the full length of Montgomery Road within the village. The study is looking, we'll look at continuous center turn lane additions, intersection improvements, existing drainage improvements, and geometric design updates. So the work has actually already begun. The county's had several meetings with staff and the public on it. During our budget process, the board approved a $70,000 contribution from the village to the county to support the cost of the Phase 1 study for the widening of Montgomery Road. And this document, the intergovernmental agreement that's attached, is the document that will make that legal. Looking to Attorney Anderson. Attorney Anderson has reviewed and approved the agreement as it's presented tonight. So I would open the floor to questions.
I have a couple of questions for you.
All right?
I do remember the open house, I think it was last October. So I'm just wondering how far along are they in the Phase 1?
I haven't had any updates on progress since then. Engineer Wallers, have you heard any updates?
I don't have an update either. I mean, their progress is, they've gone through a fair amount of the preliminary work for the Phase 1, but I don't have an exact percentage. We can get that for you, but I don't have it.
Okay. My other
Certainly something we
question,
could provide if the board was interested.
I would be interested to hear how far along and then how soon we could expect the Phase 2 to start. My other question for you is really an opinion question, not to put you on the spot. We have so many projects with IDOT within the community, and I feel we have little influence with the state projects. In your opinion, do you feel we would have influence with the county project on what our residents want?
I think we would have a higher level of input. I'd be hard pressed to say how much of it we would get. All of these projects of any size are first and foremost governed by highway construction and design standards. So any type of changes that we would ask for would first have to pass muster on that. So if we wanted some strange intersection configuration that didn't meet safety standards or geometric standards, wouldn't be allowed. But I think the county is interested in working with us on this section of roadway. There have been discussions of the county and the village discussing jurisdictional transfer. That's a big question that we haven't really gotten into. But with that in mind, I think the county would be interested in working with us to help us get a final design that we would be happy with.
Okay, thank you.
I hope that wasn't too evasive.
No, like I said, I didn't mean to necessarily put you on the spot. I just wanted your
That's my
opinion.
opinion.
Okay, thank you.
But nothing would compel us to accept the roadway when it's done. So we kind of have a little more stake in this game than we do in some of the other projects like the Route 30, because we're not taking over ownership afterwards, right?
Correct. Mhm.
Are there any other questions? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Moved and second, call the roll, please.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Heinz.
Yay.
And that carries 6-0. Thank you. Item D this evening, which is the Economic Incentive Agreement with La Chiquita. That'll ask Director Young for an update on this.
Thank you very much. Tonight, we ask that you table this item until your next meeting. Things are moving along, and the framework of the agreement has been worked out between Village Attorney Anderson and the grocery store's attorney. Just a couple minor details that need to be ironed out. Late this afternoon, we received a red line version from their attorney, which was quite extensive, so we just needed more time to make sure that we went through it, covered all the items correctly, and brought a finished document to you. And we request that you table this item for 2 weeks. I'd also add that in the interim, several of us, including Trustee Spurling, went to their store in Cicero, thank you. There are some photos at your station tonight of both their Cicero store, and I visited their Rockford store last Friday, took some other photos. It's a little bit of a newer store up in Rockford, but both facilities seem to be very clean, well-run, organized. I think we were all impressed with the different departments, the produce and the meat department at both locations. So I think we're on the right track. I think that we'll come back to you with an agreeable document next time, but we just need a little bit more review time.
I have a quick question, if I may. Just some food for thought. As I read through this and kind of mulling this around in my mind, I wasn't at the July 28th meeting. Did they, I think Montgomery Marketplace, we're getting a little over $100,000 a month in sales tax revenue.
A year.
Or, excuse me, a year. Did they give any sort of idea where it was going to fall as far as sales tax? Or they plan on doing 1.5 times what Montgomery Marketplace is doing, or did they give any sort of figures?
Yes, they did. They intend to be in the 2 to 3 times as much range.
Okay. Thank you, because then as I look at the numbers, it helps. Okay, thank you.
The other thing I'll point out is that when we did the calculations, if we looked at a 50-50 split for 15 years, Justin and I went through it, and we realized that initially, to start off with, not the loss, but the difference in the amount would be about $25,000. So we put the first $25,000 in the agreement that would go directly to the village, and then the split would take place. So it covers any potential shortfall that the village would experience from the agreement.
Okay, thank you.
I will say that I've gotten very good feedback from residents on this. I know that we haven't done an economic incentive like this before. I've gotten some good feedback. I do like the idea of tabling this until the next meeting, kind of an added benefit to give residents some more time maybe to hear about the project, just so they're aware of what's going on. If you guys have any other questions of staff in the meanwhile, please direct them to Jeff or Rich, and this will be on our next board meeting. I guess we have to take a motion to table? Or do we?
Formally, yes, but you don't really have to. It's not the sort of thing that if it came off the agenda, we couldn't put it back on anyway. So you can just move on.
Okay.
Thank you.
If nobody's opposed, we'll just move on.
One quick question, Rich, the total cap, if they don't hit it after 15 years, agreement's done anyway, right?
I'm sorry, say that again, please?
The agreement's done in a way at 15 if they don't hit that total.
Yes, sir,
Cap.
that's correct.
Whichever comes first, they hit the, yeah, well, I guess not whichever comes, well, yeah, whichever comes first, if they hit the cap or they hit the 15 years.
Okay.
Okay. We'll move on to item E this evening, which is the waiver of bid and award of a contract to North American Salt Company of Overland Park, Kansas, for the purchase of road salt for the 2014-2015 season in the amount not to exceed $309,690. And with that, I'll ask Director Pubens for a summary on this.
Thank you, President Brawley. As many of you are aware, we traditionally have purchased our salt through the State of Illinois Central Management Services, or CMS, group. They're the official procurement wing of the state, and we had intended to do so again this year. They opened their road salt bids several weeks ago, and we were notified after the opening that the successful bidder did not bid our road salt supply. We were not alone in that. There were approximately 200 agencies out of the 800 approximately that usually participate in this that did not receive bids. Initially, I thought it was going to be all the smaller users, but there have been some much larger agencies. Kendall County, for instance, was not included, and others. So in their reply to us, they highly recommended that we start seeking additional bids or other bids, which was a message to me that they were not sure that they would be able to satisfy our need for road salt this year, and they did confirm that upon speaking with them. So after consulting with Administrator Zofel and my staff, we went out, we requested 6 quotes. We received one. Excuse me. One bidder said they would not be able to send us a quote for several weeks. One company said they could not send us a quote because their entire salt commitment for that year had been taken up, and 3 companies did not reply. So as part of this process, we did have offers to join other rebids for salt purchases, one offer from Metro West and one from IDOT, who is going to rebid the project about 2 weeks after they notified us. The challenge with that, with the IDOT bid in particular, was they would not be opening those bids until late September or early October. So I felt that was far too late into the season to wait to know what our salt would cost if we could even get salt, because there was no guarantee that we would get salt on that bid either. Additionally, if we had committed to going through that rebid with the CMS, we would have had to purchase at whatever price came in. IDOT had reported to us that of the agencies that did receive bids, they were averaging between $70 and $140 per ton. The bid from North American Salt was $103.23 per ton. So we had a 3-day window in which to accept that bid. I consulted with Administrator Zofel, and based on the fact that we felt that scarcity may be an issue, we felt that price increases would definitely be an issue, whether they held within that range that IDOT had reported or continued to go up as the requests for salt supply went up, were both very realistic. So based on that, I recommended that we accept the North American quote. Administrator Zofel agreed, and we did accept that. That's outside of our standard procedure of bringing such things before the board, but due to the unusual circumstances and what I felt was the extremely high value that we place on snow removal in our community, that we needed to act at that time prior to meeting with the board. So tonight I'm bringing to you the actual agreement that we have signed as staff and looking for your after-the-fact approval of it. It's a not-to-exceed contract of just over $309,000. That represents our 3,000-ton request at the bid price of $103.23. 3,000 tons was selected in anticipation of what we would use this year and to build up our stockpile, which we almost eliminated last year. We're required to buy 80% of the 3,000, which would be 2,400 tons. So we'll have some opportunity to reduce the overall cost of the salt purchase this year. And as you get on the cover sheet, I put what that minimum would be, about 240,000. So we can talk more about that as the winter progresses and we see what our needs are. So if it's a mild winter, we would certainly shoot to buy as little as we could at that higher price. So with all that said, I'd open it up for questions.
We just add that we did ask them to extend the 3-day period they gave us, and they were not willing to do that. So,
I have questions. The budget estimate's 165,000. Even at 80%, we're still almost $83,000 above what the budget estimate is. If we go to 100%, we're almost double what the budget estimate is. Why is that so off?
Why is what's?
Because I see a budget estimate here of $165,000, and the amount of award, even at 80%, unless I'm not understanding the numbers correctly,
The
is,
price per ton jumped.
I understand.
we based our
right,
budget.
but
based our
why
budget
is
we
it
made last
so,
year.
so far off?
I can explain that. Our budget request was based on historically what we've seen. Actually, the price of salt has dropped the last 2 years, I believe. So we didn't assume that it was going to drop again, but we built in, we felt what was considered a very reasonable increase, and I don't have that percentage, but around $60 per ton.
Okay,
So when the bids came back at no bid came back, and then the first quote at 103, that's why you're seeing such a huge gap between the 165 and the 240 minimum, 309 max.
because contractually, now we're obligated to purchase 80%.
Correct.
Based upon last year, they were obligated to supply up to, I think, or whoever our supplier was obligated to supply up to what, 120%?
Correct.
Were they able to fulfill that, or were the salt companies just saying, oh, it's been a tough winter, we're just out of salt, we don't have any more to go around?
They were able to supply that. Once we hit that mark, they would not sell us any more salt. They were, in my opinion, doing their best to make sure all the communities that they had contractual obligations to received as much salt as they could up to that 120. My opinion, and I don't know if anyone will examine the procurement process this year, but there perhaps was a underestimation of what the demand for road salt would be this year, and the bid documents weren't changed, perhaps to address that. I don't know the inner workings of CMS.
To me, that seems like the problem that perhaps we should highlight in this is that somehow the winning bidder was allowed to cherry pick the ones that they wanted to provide salt to, and the rest of us are kind of screwed in the process. So that's something that I know that Metro West has been talking with. I've talked to other mayors about it too, that's a serious concern, and this is going to put a serious dent in the MFT funds that we have available for our next roads program cycle. So, but like Director Pubin said, we highly value our road salt and the safe driving in the winter. So it's kind of one of those things that you had to do, and I appreciate both of you guys working what I believe to be in the best interest of the village to secure our salt supply, otherwise we still wouldn't have any. And I don't have the Kendall County per ton numbers, but I know I read it in the ledger last week, and I think it's in line with this.
It was slightly below his mid-90s, I believe, somewhere around 95.
Correct.
So that's a safe check for me on this, so.
I mean, is it that the Illinois Department of Central Management Service is not doing their job? I mean,
In this case, I'm not qualified to comment on that. I don't know enough about the process.
then, I agree with what Matt said. It seems like when I read through this, I saw 165,000. Then I saw the amount of award, and I'm like, what is going on?
The cost jumped about 40%, correct? So supply and demand, and again,
Our cost nearly doubled.
President Brawley mentioned that they were allowed to cherry pick and weed out and say, well, we can't supply everybody, but we're going to take this group and supply them.
Yeah, but
Well,
if they,
and what was the winning bid was, what was the state bid awarded at?
It varies from agency to agency.
Okay.
So the range that IDOT gave us was 70 to 140. So even under the CMS bid, there were some communities that are paying $140 a ton, apparently. The bid is set up so the bidders can put a price on each individual agency. It's not a blanket price per.
Which is, that's new, correct? That wasn't the way it was
I
previously?
believe it has been like that in the past.
Okay.
It's never been an issue. I can't recall any time communities did not get salt after the 2011 with the blizzard in February. The following year, the prices varied quite a lot. That season, we were on the better side. We were about $60 a ton, and some of our adjacent communities were over 100. And again, you try to put some logic as to why there would be such a huge swing in pricing for two communities that are equidistant from any shipping points, et cetera.
I want to remind everyone that now that it's August and it was 87 over the weekend, and it's as far removed, I do want to remind everyone and commend you on last year's winter season when you started to ration early to ensure that we didn't run out of road salt and having the forethought, and again, proactively working on our interests to make sure we have salt. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
yeah, I'm not upset with you. I'm upset with the system. I'm upset with the central management service. This is unbelievable.
Should we express some displeasure to CMS about their process or rely on Metro West to verbalize that?
I think we'll look into both. If Metro West is taking some action, I think my opinion would be that it would carry more weight coming from an organization of 20 or 30 municipalities, but I believe that Mary is looking into this, or at least working on some.
Does this also allow for the overage like we'd had previously, where it was, we had it by 80, but we could get 120, or is this at 100% we're done?
This stops at 100%. There's
Okay.
no 120% guarantee on this.
Okay.
I think I'm particularly troubled by what criteria they would use to decide who is left out. I could see disappointing everyone by giving them some portion of what they need, but how do you decide that somebody doesn't get any?
Did you bring donuts to the bid process? Did you try to sweeten the pot a little for us? Because it sounds like it was just fairly arbitrary.
They allowed that, they'd have truckloads of donuts. It's hard for me to comment on whether it was arbitrary or how,
What the
what
method,
the requirements are for how they pick it. And perhaps that's something we'll be educated on here very soon.
Any other questions? Hearing none, entertain a motion for approval.
So moved?
second?
Moved in second. Call the roll, please.
Trustee Bond.
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yes.
Trustee Heinz.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yay.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Thank you.
That carries 6-0. Thank you. Moving on to item F this evening, which is the waiver of a temporary liquor license fee for the Fox Valley Park District. And with that, I'll turn it over to,
I will take it. We had a couple questions we're still trying to work out. We did not get in time, so we're going to ask you to table this item also tonight until we can work those out, and we will bring this back to you.
if there are no objections to that, we'll,
What event is this, by the way?
They're looking at further having a zombie run out at Stewart Sports.
Okay,
In the past, they've had it out at Blackberry, but they're running out of room there, so.
okay. Thank you.
Is this just for that one event,
Yes,
or is this kind of a rolling
Well,
whenever
we-
they want it?
we'd like to talk about an IGA
Okay.
to get them both ways, but this would be just for this one event to give us time, because this event's in September, so they asked for this as a one-time, and then to work on IGA after that.
okay. Moving on, items for discussion this evening. We have item A, the salary survey, and I'll turn it over to Director of Finance.
Thank you, Village President Brawley. With us tonight is Human Resources Manager Estrico. She was the one that put the salary survey together, received all the results back, and the results are in front of you. Jeff and I did meet with Megan and went over these, and the result is what you see today. I'm actually going to turn it over to Megan, since she's the one that put it together. She's most intimately aware of the ins and outs. So with that, I'll turn it over to Megan.
All right, thank you. As Justin said before you this evening, are the results of a salary survey that was completed at the board's request, as well as our recommendations for adjustments to the village's salary schedule as a result of this survey. In the past, the comparables are determined based on factors such as number of employees, budget size, EAV, et cetera. This time, we decided to use a geographic area to determine our comps, and the geographic boundaries we used were routes 47, 38, 59, and 126. And actually, the very last page of this section, the last page before the ordinance in this section shows what the comparables were. It was 8 communities. We excluded the city of Aurora just due to their size, and their structure was just so different than everyone else. We left them out of the survey. But we felt that by choosing communities within closer boundaries, that those are more of the communities that we're competing with for employees, whereas the old method of using financial factors and employee numbers brought in a lot of communities that were just too far away to really be competition for us. So after looking at the results and putting them together, we sat down and decided that we would use a 5% rule to determine which ranges to recommend for adjustment. We thought that any ranges of ours that were within 5% of the average was fair and competitive with the other municipalities, whereas any ranges that deviated more than 5% from the average of the other communities, we recommended an adjustment for. The first 6 pages of the packet after the memo are divided by department, starting with department heads, moving to the administration department, community development, finance, police, and public works. And those are the pages that list what our recommendations are. The other pages following that include backup, and those will tell you what the ranges were for each municipality that responded to the salary survey, as well as the current actual salaries for our employees. The survey resulted in our recommendation for adjustment to 6 current positions and establishes ranges for 3 new positions that did not previously have ranges established. There were a couple of positions, particularly within the police department, where we saw a variance greater than 5%, but are only recommending to move the range within the 5% and not match the average range of the other communities, and that was to just sort of establish a hierarchy so that there was a progressive increases in the ranges as positions progress in responsibility. I guess with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any questions from the board on this?
I have a few.
Go ahead.
In looking at and maybe I'm missing something, but currently, we have records clerks at the PD, and one of them is over the cap already.
That, yeah, there was some supplemental information that was left at your desks
That's
before the
one.
meeting that listed the actuals of the records clerk positions and the sergeants. The one records clerk that is over the maximum already was previously in a dispatch position. And when the dispatch center was closed, she was moved to a records clerk position in the police department, and her salary has been frozen at the rate she was currently receiving as a dispatcher.
I notice in municipal government, we're very good at, like you say, we changed titles, and therefore, all of a sudden, you can change the salaries. At the same time, I know you said you're recommending 5% for the people that are low, but for the people up high, I don't think they're going to give us 5% back. And some of these are, some of the people, as you can see on here, if you can figure out the titles, when you go down to one, and they may have 6 different names at every village. I guess I'm more interested in the last sheet you gave me here, the across-the-board COLA increases and the merit increases, and how everybody, it seems like everybody but us and Oswego just agree on give everybody 2 to 3%, and it doesn't make a difference if you just keeping the seat warm. And that we and Oswego do merit increases, and yet nobody's at 5%. And so why should we be the leader? If we're going to be the leader, let's be the leader in the other direction instead of saying, okay, they're at 2, let's go 5. To me, that just, talking to business people in the community, a lot of them haven't given raises in 5 years. I realize this is just caps. I realize that. But merit increases are not caps. In other words, you can do it, and to give everybody the same increase, in which most, pretty close to it last time, everybody got the same. And to me, I just can't see that. I don't know. The business community ain't doing it. Why should we as a municipality do it? Because the people that we're taxing are saying this to me. So-
We're not getting, yeah, I agree with Trustee Lee. The private sector, people aren't seeing an increase, but yet we're continuing to pass them out. And a 5% increase is a lot on a merit-based increase, along with, we just keep ratcheting everybody up faster towards the cap. And then when we hit the cap, we give the money, we give the money not as an increase, we give it as a bonus. So they're still receiving a merit increase, it's just in the form of a bonus, and it's not affecting the base pay. So the cap isn't really a cap, it's just stopping the base pay from going up. It kind of stops it's like putting your finger in the hole. The water's still going out over here.
And I understand that pensions are a big part of the municipality employees, that they're after the pension. But when it gets to a cap and you're giving them 3,000-4,000 bonus and saying, here you go, you're at your cap. Well, and now we're raising the cap. Some of the caps I think you have to raise because it is maybe, as this say, not quite where it should be. But there's others that are, all you do is change the name of somebody. Oh, you're not this, you're now this. Oh, now you're into the higher cap. And you go, oh, that's a good deal. But private businesses usually don't do that unless you're near the top of the board. You don't do it down below. You don't see a person doing that.
I noticed that we have, based on the list here, we have account managers, administrative assistants, we have several different categories that to me seem like they're the same. We have a management analyst position at the PD that, in reading the description, I'm just questioning how the term analyst becomes a part of that. because I don't see, there's nothing in that description shows where they're analyzing anything. And again, I have experienced this with the school district where they put a salary cap in, a salary freeze in, and suddenly all of the people that I knew had new job titles and got increases. Exactly what Denny's talking about. They just, you're just shuffling the stuff around to work around the rules. If it's frozen, it's frozen. If it's a cap, it's a cap. We can't just keep manipulating. And in looking at this position, I'm just curious. It looks to me like it's an executive, it would be the equivalent of what we have here at Village Hall as the executive assistant, right? So that would be like Debbie. So then we have a comparable position at the PD, but we're calling it something different. And I'm not sure why we confuse the issue. If it's a similar workload, if it's a similar position, why aren't we calling it the same, coming up with one set of rules, and this is what they are?
All right.
I agree with you. It's like a shell game with the titles, but at the same time, the school districts, I think, it looks like they're all in the same game. I mean, everybody keeps increasing, but they're also trying to keep their good employees, which we are too. But when we have employees coming from Yorkville, Sugar Grove, I don't get it, I guess. We're not losing people, we're gaining them, which means our pay and our working conditions must be good, or they wouldn't be coming here. And then to turn around and say, let's go with an automatic 5 again. That, to me, I just can't see it. Like I said before, the last meetings, somebody's got to stop it, and if we're the one to stop it, then maybe we won't get some good employees, but we've got some great ones now. We want to keep them, and if the range is close, I think they should worry more about the merit increases than worrying about COLAs and everybody getting the same increase. Somebody does a good job, give them the increase, but to go across the board like we did last time, I just can't see that. Sorry.
I agree with what you're saying.
No, that's fine. I'll just keep taking notes.
I agree with what Trustee Lee is saying. I think there are a few, like, I'm looking at the sergeant position in the police department. I'm seeing the current, I'm seeing the average. I think there are a few that need to be adjusted. But you're right. Just because you occupy a seat and keep it warm doesn't mean that you get an automatic 2, 3, 4, 5% pay increase every year. I'm just happy I have a job.
Well, even the merit increases, the way it goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it's somewhere in this packet, I can't find it right now, but 1% was not doing a satisfactory job, and yet okay, we're going to give you 1% in a way. You're not doing your job, but we're going to give you 1%. It just doesn't happen in the business world that way. And to me, the municipalities are somewhat like the school districts. They're just trying to keep up, but somebody's got to say, let's stay where we're at.
That's the second time I think we've referred to or made a comment about people keeping seats warm. And I don't like to think of it that way, in a sense that I really do believe that we have employees here in Montgomery that are working hard for the residents of Montgomery. And I don't want people to get the idea or the impression that we don't value that. So I just wanted to make that comment, that I think if somebody gets a 5, they earned a 5, and they've worked darn hard for the residents of Montgomery.
I agree with that. I'm not saying that they're keeping the seat. I'm just saying you could be the guy that do that, and you're still going to get something. We're trying to keep our employees happy, and we're trying to give them a high, but in a lot of cases, we're the highest on some of these. And for what reason? I mean, it's in business, it's just, you don't have to do that to keep a good employee.
I agree with what Matt said. They do work darn hard, but I work darn hard just to keep my job. So, and, I don't get a pay increase every year. There are many years, the way that I'm incentivized is I can make less. So I still work darn hard.
Matt, I've always said, what do we care about what the other communities are getting? We take care of Montgomery. Forget about this, check it around and see what the wages are. Just take care of our own people. I don't care what the other people make.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Pete.
I'm having a little trouble lumping all of the various functions of the village and the staff that perform them into one solution. We've got a variety of departments with a variety of responsibilities. The two thoughts I have are, in some cases where we can, we may decide this is as high of a range as this position should be with us in this village. And whether we're prepared to do that or not, every employer has to establish a payment level that's consistent with that function. And I don't know if we've done that in the past or if we have the time to do it now, but it's an interesting concept for government to try to do as well. But I think the more important observation for me at the moment is that while I agree there are some situations where our range is higher, as I look at the police department, I'm seeing some situations where our average is lower. And I'm seeing as a trustee a lot more pressure on the police force than we've seen, I think, ever before. More calls, more problems, more issues that have to be dealt with. And I think the complexity of what is involved now in prosecuting a case, collecting evidence, has become more complicated. So as I look at some of the police positions, we're lagging behind some other communities. And that's where the one-size-fits-all thing troubles me a little bit. I work hard for my money too, but I don't have a skill set that would allow me to qualify for this job. And the reality is, I think we're competing with a lot of other communities for people that have that skill set and are willing to maintain it over a period of time. That's a stressful, difficult job. And the attrition rate on that is something that's a factor as well. So I would like us to consider maybe looking at this more department by department, if is it possible to do that, or at least give each department head a chance to offer their opinion on where we stand with this.
I can't agree with you on that, because you look under accounts payable clerk, the rest of the cities don't call them accounts payable clerks. I mean, it's all different names, they kind of put it that way, but I'm sure in that department, they know what they want, and they know who's qualified. So to compare these is kind of like, you don't really know, but I do not like you say, across the board, 5%. I can't see that. I just, there's just too many different job descriptions, and
Which 5% are you talking about? The merit increase? or
Merit
the- All right, just trying
Merit.
to keep track of what we're.
well, even, I don't care if you can do the other, I don't think it should be 5%. I can't see either one. I don't know why you'd say it would give everybody a 5% on the wage cap, because some may be so high now or so low.
And we're not. We're saying if we vary from the average by more than 5%, adjust the ranges. There's only, I think, 5 we're adjusting. Like the accounts payable one, we're adjusting down because we were high. So we're moving that range down.
You are moving to 5, that's why I asked in the
Yeah.
beginning, you're going to move it down.
Yeah.
Okay,
Because
not.
we're more than
like I
5%.
say, I know you're going to move them up, but.
No, we're moving them
again-
down, yeah. Our
Okay.
recommendation is to move the accounts payable position down
All right.
because we're more than 5% above the average. So if we were 5% above or more than 5% below, we're recommending to move to the average, except in situations with police, because they are so compressed with the number of positions they have, from sergeant now to lieutenant, deputy chief, we can't come to the average because they would overlap too much. So we're trying to get them within that 5%. So you'll see we're recommending to get them to 4.99% below the average. Because you'll see the ranges as they are, there's a lot of crossover with them that way. So no, so we are, with that 5% variance, we're moving positions up or down, depending. We're not just taking the good side of it. If we're high, we felt 5% was a good cutoff. Anything less than that, we felt we were close enough, because some were higher than the average, some were lower, but it's close enough that we didn't think it mattered. As far as the 5% merit increase,
What does that number represent? Is that a suggestion that we're going to give 5%? Because you didn't give 5% across the board last year.
No, and
It
that's,
was-
it used to be, everybody got a COLA, and then there was a merit piece out there, but everybody got the same merit component. If you scored a 60, or you scored an 85 or a 90 on your evaluation, you got 3%. what we did last year is we asked to do away with the COLA, so people weren't getting an increase just for being here. We went to straight merit, but with doing that, we increased the merit pool and asked if we could have some flexibility in granting, your better employees 4% and lesser ones, 3%, 2%, whatever it is. Because if you're an employee that's doing outstanding work and you see you're getting 3% and this guy who's down here just barely getting by is getting 3% also, there's no motivation for your good employees. To do that, we feel we need a larger range to allow for that. I mean, a lot of people did get higher scores last year, but we feel we have valuable employees. But there were people who got low increases also, or no increases. I mean, there was a mix in there. Part of it with 5% too, with no COLA, part of your increase you're getting is eaten up right away by inflation. I mean, so.
There's no
I
COLA in
was
the private
under the-
world.
I know, that's,
There, I mean,
It is
in
what
the,
it
in the
is.
real world, in the private sector, there is no COLA.
I
You get an
understand.
increase for an increase, and since I, as a tax-paying citizen, am paying these salaries, I don't feel like
Well, that's-
passing COLA automatic.
that's why we did away
is
with
right.
that.
So,
But we do have 2 unions that do.
Well, I was going to say, that the Public Works is not, but police, if you remember, police officers are getting a 2% COLA, and they're getting a merit increase of either 4.5% or 6%, depending on where they are in their schedule. So they're getting 6.5% to 8%. So to tell your other employees that we think 5% is too much for you, I would rather give my money to my employees than, pardon me, Steve, but than to pay an attorney to negotiate more union contracts for me.
I disagree in the fact that the police are performing a task that is far beyond somebody sitting and answering a phone or generating a check, filling a copy machine, looking at plans. It's a different animal. So to compare that,
Well, running your public works department or your finance staff, I mean, the skills they have, this group out here has, and they're falling in that same category with the people you're talking about. So they have different skills, but the talent you have sitting out there,
and we pay well for that talent. We've paid well. We've gone out and we've hired well. We've increased what we were going to pay for those positions because we want good talent, and we have great talent. We have great leadership. But we can't just continue to increase. We have to, someplace, we have to draw a line and say, we want to be the leader in saying, let's hold up here. We have to stop for a minute. We need to check ourselves for a little while. The economy started to come back. We need to wait until it actually gets back before we continue. We still don't have funding for our roads program. We're asking taxpayers to pass a tax referendum. We need to show them that we're trying to hold this. We need to spend our money wisely.
and I feel we do.
And I think when you say a person needs an incentive to move on, I don't see why these people have to have incentive. Rich didn't have to have an incentive to drive to Rockford to look at that. He didn't have to get that incentive. That's his job. He did it automatically. He doesn't need, something to give him incentive. He does a great job. He's not going to go to Rockford just because, well, if they're going to give me more money, I'm going to drive to Rockford. If I'm not, I'm going to sit in my office.
He doesn't do it because of that, but we'd like to recognize an employee that's willing to go above and beyond. I feel they are valuable employees, and we want to be able to recognize that.
I
Because what
agree
I was
with that.
hearing was, our police officers are valuable, they deserve that, but our other employees are doing lesser jobs and don't deserve to be recognized at the same level.
I agree
And I
with
don't
that.
feel that is fair to our other employees.
But I also think when you said you didn't give people no merit increases, as far as I looked on that list, everybody got a merit increase. I think
One.
Doug and I,
One,
maybe didn't.
But
Yeah.
they all did not get at the top there. You may sound like everybody got the
No,
top.
I
There
didn't
was-
say not
there was a
everybody
range
got
in
the
there.
top, but I would say there more got 5% than 1%. You got to tell them that.
Agreed.
Okay, all right.
I feel we have good employees, though, so that's a good sign. If we have a lot of people getting 1%, then
We're doing something wrong.
we're doing something wrong.
I don't think anyone on the board is saying that we don't value our staff and our employees. We value every one of them. It's just that we're sitting here as 7 individuals who are elected to watch the purse strings for the rest of the citizens. So, I mean,
I understand what you're doing.
we have
I
to
just
do
want-
our job as well, so.
I just don't want employees out there feeling they are not appreciated through
No,
this discussion.
and
so.
again, I want the record to reflect, absolutely, I think all of the employees here work hard. I spent this past weekend working side by side with several of the Public Works folks and throughout the village at the booth and everything else. And I value all of the employees, and I think that they work hard for us. But again, maybe it's because I'm a private sector person. It just can't continue to happen. We just can't continue to just give it. The police is a negotiated contract with their union. We can't really do much about that. We negotiated that. But we can't just, because the police negotiated with their union, we can't say, okay, we give that to everybody else.
And I'll jump in right there and say that I think, and I don't want to speak for everybody, that everybody here would agree with you, that we cannot just give it. That's one of the things that, that Jeff actually recommended to this board after he was hired, that he wanted to do away with the just give it increase and go with the people who are working hard get increases. And I applaud him for that, and I think that's the right way to go, because that's what we deal with in the real world, not the real world, but in the public sector, private sector. So we don't just give it, and I think we, people who earn increases get them. One comment I did want to make about the police kind of goes back to, we've had some turnover here and there, and this maybe could be the reason why we've had some turnover, is that, and you're looking here, is these are outside of our management analyst and records clerk. This is the leadership in our police department right here that's, 21% under the range. And we invest a significant amount of money in our sergeants who, correct me if I'm wrong, all of them started here, right? We didn't.
That's correct.
They've all worked from within the village of Montgomery to become sergeants. We've invested a terrible amount of time and energy in them, and we don't really want to lose any of them. So, moving those ranges, I think, is I just don't want to see us hold the line on something to say, for the few percent for one specific category of employees, and then end up losing people that are highly valuable. But I don't disagree with you that the just because increases.
The ranges we're recommending moving, I think all of you probably agree with, because we're looking at the police sergeant, the deputy chief, the code enforcement officer, and the building inspection supervisor. I mean, those are the positions that were out, and then the accounts payable one's going down, which I didn't figure anybody would.
And I agree with all of those, and Megan, you probably didn't realize that this was going to be such a hot topic today. But, I'm pleased to see that a lot of these, it says no change to current range recommended. The other changes that I see are new positions where we don't have a salary range. And, we're talking about the patrol sergeant position. Yeah, I think it needs to be adjusted. And based upon the information I see here, it needs to be, that's probably the one position that I'm looking at based upon this information that needs to be adjusted the most. There are a couple others, a building inspector, but I'm pleased to see that we're in that average with everybody else for the most part.
And that a testament to that really is that we have not had a hard time finding highly qualified people to fill some of these positions in the last 2 years that we've hired, is that we've been in line with the ranges in the area, relatively speaking. So we're not taking action on this tonight, obviously. I think, Stan, did you have a comment you were going to make?
I have a question, if I may. I wanted to go back to our statistical model for a moment. It appears that of the 8 communities we studied, they were selected kind of more on proximity,
Right.
physical proximity.
In the past, the board had sometimes had issues with our comparables. I remember Clarendon Hills was one, because people felt they were just so far away that we weren't competing for the same employees. So we tried this time to look geographically to say, this is the area where we're pulling employees from, that they might travel from these communities. So that was how we selected this time.
Here's a concern I would raise. I'm far from being a statistician, but of the communities we did choose, more than half of them have budgets that are substantially larger than ours, really larger than ours. In some cases, twice or 3 times. So I'm concerned statistically about whether that's an accurate template. If we're only using 8 and 50% of them have a larger pool of cash to work with, should we be looking at a different sample or a bigger sample?
Like I said, in the past, we've looked more, people that had the same population size, number of employees, budgets, and like I said, there'd been issues raised by the board over the communities we picked based on that while they match us in those areas, they were not in the same market where we were competing for employees. So to address that issue this time, we tried to say, all right, we're going to look geographically. Here's the area around us where we might be drawing employees from or who we're competing with. So, I mean, we could draw up probably 5 or 6 different models. This is the one we chose to go with because we felt it addressed the concerns we heard in the past.
Justin?
I have to say it.
Justin wanted to add something to that, too.
If I can, looking at the population, we did look at geographically, but then looking at the population, we have 4 that are larger than us. We have 4 that are smaller than us. You look at if you leave general fund budget out for a second, and you look at the total budget, there are 5 that have budgets larger than us, 2 that are fairly close, but 5 larger and 3 smaller. 2 of those 5 are within probably a couple $1 million. I know it's a couple $1 million, but the general fund, it is really hard to compare municipality to municipality with the general fund. What you might have is somebody might have a fire department that's included within their general fund. Another municipality might have a parks department that's included in their general fund. So when you look at the general fund, it's kind of hard to do a comparison there. So just wanted to touch base on those couple items. So we felt comparatively they are fairly similar to us. So
I think they're similar to us, but when you say half of them are smaller than us, just because Yorkville and North Aurora is 500 people or something, I put them as all 3 of us are the same size. And Batavia, Geneva have definitely, and especially Plainfield, have a lot different income people coming in, and they have a lot higher taxes. But it's entirely different communities. If you say we're like Geneva or we're like Plainfield, but a guy can go get a job either place because it's close enough, and then go to Plano, but Plano is so small that I think you pick the right ones. But I wouldn't say that half are bigger and half are smaller, because really you don't. In Warrenville, that's kind of a question too, because they're right by Wheaton and Naperville, and that's big money too. I mean, they don't, the taxes are entirely different. So I think the comparables are like us, not smaller than us. And I don't have any problem with the comparables. I guess I do when I see this, and a couple of our people are making more than the people in Geneva and Plainfield are, and I'm going, why would that be? That just does not, to me, doesn't make sense, and that's why I don't like across-the-board stuff, is when you see a clerk making more than somebody in Geneva and Plainfield, and you go, why is that? I mean, it doesn't even make sense to me, because they do have the bigger town and the bigger budgets.
Would there be any appetite on the board's part for a third party to offer some guidance on the issue of compensation? Our accounting, our auditing firm, for example, provides that service.
I personally don't like that idea, because it comes still back to us sitting here, and I think Jeff can work it out with who he thinks, where instead of just across the board on merit increases. Maybe the other thing is the merit increase. Everybody gives 2% COLA. 2 cities give 2 and 4, and we're giving 5% merits. Well, why should we be the highest? I can't see that. I know the staff is good staff, but I imagine, Oswego's got a good staff too, and they only go 4, and Geneva definitely probably has a good staff, 'cause most of those people have been there 20 years. They're only getting 2, then why do we have to go 5? That I don't understand. I don't mind giving them some kind of merit increase, because you do give them a little incentive, but they have to look around the business world and say, these people there haven't even got 2% in 5 years. Why should I get 2% every year? I don't mind if they do, but It just doesn't make sense in municipal government, I guess.
I want to clarify, though, just that we're talking about a 5% maximum range, and when you talked about Geneva having 2%, they're at 4 because they're giving a 2 for COLA.
That's
So
true.
to be fair, they're at 4, not 2,
Okay.
for Geneva.
And
same-
our
you know,
Oswego's 4, but
Oswego's
we're
at 4,
still at
Marion
5,
is.
in other words. What, we could do a 4. You see what I mean? Why do we always have to be the highest? That's all I'm asking.
Well, and can we just offer guidance, and now that Administrator Zoffel knows exactly where we stand on this, that when he's doing the reviews and he's doing the merit increases, I would venture to guess that you're going to see a lot less 5s. Am I mistaken? I mean, you know, it's a cap,
Tonight's discussion,
you know, it's a cap, so it's one of those things that I just want to be fair about it, that, you know, when we're talking about these others that are 2, well, they're also giving COLAs on some of those, so I don't want it to be misrepresented.
3 questions I need to ask real quick that I had. What did we budget for? Part of the confusion is this sheet that was handed out today. That's what a lot of this, I think, discussion has been about. What increases did we budget for this year?
The increases that we budgeted for this year were based upon the average that was given out last year. The average was between 3 and 3.5 last year, and that's what we budgeted for increases this year.
Gotcha. Okay. I lost all the other questions.
And if I may, this sheet that we handed out here tonight was just for information purposes. It was included as a question on the survey, what people were giving out for merit and COLA. Our recommendations are just for adjustments to the ranges. It doesn't mean automatic increases for anybody at this time. It's just adjustment to the salary range and the cap on how much they could eventually earn after increasing merit increases over several years.
Okay. I haven't heard really any opposition to the changes, the specific ones that we're changing. Obviously, we're not taking action on this tonight. Would the board be okay if we put this on the next agenda for action if we choose? We can also debate it more and table it if you have additional questions.
The code enforcement officer one, not to single one out, but I see that is going up, and it's going up significantly based on this average sheet. I would really be curious as to what code enforcement requirements are, because I pulled it off of our website since the job's posted, and that position currently requires a high school diploma and a GED, and it's proposed that we're going to be starting that at $50,000 for a high school diploma position. I question that, because when you look at Yorkville, they're down at 37. We're $13,000 higher for somebody with 2 years' experience. We're paying $12,000 more than that currently.
Sure, I know Yorkville's is a part-time seasonal position. I did adjust all the ranges for people who responded with part-time. I adjusted them to 40 hours, just for comparison's sake.
Thank you.
But, I mean, I guess Rich could probably speak more to the requirements for the code enforcement.
It's not like
officer.
you can take a high school graduate and just put them into that position. It is a specialized skill. It's leading hopefully to a job that's more of a building inspector or a plan reviewer, or more involved with the building code itself, and not just strictly a code enforcement officer. And I think what's telling is you did pick out Yorkville, which is the lowest, but we're $10,000 below the average of the 8 communities surveyed. So it does show that we were off quite a bit in terms of what our range was. And again, it doesn't have to mean that you start somebody at the $60,000 level, but it does show that our average was $10,000 low in the
Well,
market.
and we have somebody in that range that's 10 years' experience, 25 years' experience
Correct.
as well. So we got some people that are pretty, working their way up the pay scale pretty well
Yeah. that-
due to
that's correct.
longevity.
That's correct.
So that's why I
And there are
question that
certain certifications.
we're raising our low end up, and that's what you know, and the certifications I think are great, but we don't list any of those as being a requirement for the position. So maybe we should just update the,
We'll have a better handle on this in 2 weeks on this particular
get the
position
applicants.
because Megan has just advertised and we're right in the middle of the process of receiving applications to fill this position. We intend to do it quickly because we have the need, obviously. Mike is overtaxed right now with everything that's going on, and this is their busy season anyway. So, but I think we'll have a better understanding of the type of candidate that we're receiving applications for and their certifications. But it's not just a high school graduate.
I'm still tilting as a no vote on this based on discomfort with the sample we've chosen. So I could be the only no vote or however
Oh,
that
no, you
goes,
won't.
but
No, you won't.
I would like to see this broadened a bit to satisfy that problem I've got with the comparables.
I'm not comfortable for us to put this on for action. I spoke with President Brawley before our meeting. I'm quite uncomfortable with this coming to us after the fest. I know we pushed to bring it back. However, I looked at this today. I had my budget out. I tried to dig in and do a lot of research and really, really dig in there, and I don't feel I had the time to go over it. That's why you didn't hear from me. But I'm not comfortable with what's here in this ordinance.
So we want it as an item for discussion again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Item for discussion. I'm never going to say that more data is a bad thing. If there are staff, you guys maybe deliberate on that and see if there were some communities that might have been on the bubble that we didn't include, that maybe it would be good. You know, we've heard one comment that the data set is a little small. You know, Denny commented that he was good with it, so.
I think your data, it's so, like Stan and I said, that accounts payable, nobody's got that name, and you got 8 different employees. You got Jared as a senior planner, but he's the only planner. So it's like, okay, so how do you know how you're comparing him with somebody else? I mean, it's just a little confusing. I don't mind the caps, like you say, if we're high, low, but the merit increase is where I think it's got to be closer to, if the employee really deserves it, then give it to them. But at the same time, last year, I think we gave a little, across the board, a little too much. And it's just, and I did ask before, you know, maybe Megan didn't get the answer, but I'd like to see what an IT person in the towns make. Every month, just like today's, or every time we have a board meeting, I see 6,000, 7,000 going to IT, and in the end of the year, it's 6 figures. You can hire somebody, I'm sure, out there for less than that can do our IT. It just, and we'd still have to use somebody else probably for certain things. But I'd like to see if anybody else has an IT person and what they make.
We did gather that information.
Yeah, we did actually gather that information, and we can provide it next time. I would comment that our budget for IT was actually lower than those who have in-house IT people.
The IT people around here are all making over $100,000?
The total budget, many of them have more than one IT person, so.
We didn't bring that tonight because tonight we were just trying to focus on the salary ranges for the positions we have, but we did gather that information to bring back to you.
And I guess one other comment on how we conducted the survey, the descriptions that you see on here that kind of provide a little brief job description, those were provided to the municipalities we surveyed so that they could provide us their most comparable position. So even though the titles may be very different, they responded with the position that most closely matched the duties that we listed in the little snippet of information there.
thank you for that, because that helps to know, like Denny said, all these titles are different. They at least they know what apples to apples are, what we're trying to compare. We're
Right.
not guessing at it. They know what this job's entailed. Thank you for including that.
Does overtime, I mean, how would overtime factor into this discussion? Because I know that there are some positions, certainly we have some that are exempt, everybody probably does, but then there are some that probably routinely work more than 40 hours a week. I mean, should that factor into this discussion, or?
There are certain positions, and trustee Bond, you mentioned one specifically earlier, the executive assistant versus the management analyst. One is an exempt position and one is a non-exempt position. So the executive assistant would be eligible for overtime, whereas the management analyst is an exempt position that would not be eligible for overtime. So that's where some of those differences in the names come from, is exempt versus non-exempt employees, so.
Okay.
And she works 50 to 60 hours a week.
Mhm. Okay. If you have additional thoughts on this, please.
Comment briefly
Yeah.
on the overtime. I would ask everyone to keep in mind that overtime isn't just given to people. They earn that overtime by showing up here in the middle of the night, on holidays, on weekends, 12 weekends in a row last winter. So it certainly goes towards their compensation, and that's money that we're paying. But please don't gloss over that as that's part of their base salary, and they're just getting it. It's absolutely earned, and it's not guaranteed either.
I understand overtime is not guaranteed, but I don't want to go out at midnight and fix a water main either, but he is compensated good enough where if you look on the sheet, and in fact, we just hired one that said, I'm glad I got on Montgomery because I'll make more here than I will in Oswego, mainly probably because we got more water main breaks and around that he gets to work extra overtime, but he's not going to be just in that 40, 45 because Public Works, you got to be out there at odd times. But he could, you can make better money, definitely.
Part of the reason he feels he makes better money is he doesn't have to pay $400 or $500 a month to commute now. He wasn't working in Oswego. But I agree with your point that he's going to have to be out there, as do all of our positions. The person you're talking about is covered by a union contract, so I don't know if that position or any of the guys fixing water main breaks pertains to this conversation tonight. The positions we're talking about tonight would be the two supervisors and the administrative assistant, as well as my position in Public Works Department. I am exempt, I do not get overtime, but the other three positions do. So again, the only point I wish to make tonight is that please don't assume that that is just money on top of their base salary. That they get that money, but it also comes with giving extra time to the village to earn it.
Certainly.
So if we want to take in some correction for that when you're doing the comparisons.
Just ask, I guess, as it sounds like we're wrapping this up, over the next 2 weeks, as you have time to delve into this more, if there's information you feel would be helpful, if you could let me know, or Justin or Megan, so that we can gather that and bring it back to help the discussion next time. So, because we'll be happy to provide you with whatever we can. If you just let us know what that is.
And if you could route all of those questions or answers to the rest of the board, just so we have those. And then we'll talk about this in 2 weeks at our next meeting, correct?
Correct.
Awesome.
Matt, when you say, so when I send the question to Jeff,
He will route it to everyone.
you'll route it?
He'll route the
Okay.
answer, yeah.
Okay, this was the question, and then here's the
Get it
answer.
to me and I'll
You'll handle it. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to illegal fireworks today, and I'll turn it over to Chief of Police, Dan Meyer, for his report.
Thank you, President Brawley. Tonight, in front of you, I created a memo. I know we've discussed this in the last month and a half, in reference to fireworks, and so we'll start. Attached to the memo real quick is the last 3 to 4 years of press releases that we try to put out, explaining what we're going to do during that time period. And it's not just July 4th, it's well into the middle of June when it starts, and it doesn't even end. I've talked to a few of you in the last couple of weeks where fireworks were still going on, and actually tonight, they're still going on this past weekend, which is into August. So first, I would ask Steve if it is possible to look at discussion item number 2. Are we able to write and adjust our ordinance to have a fixed fine, or actually
A minimum.
minimum, correct?
Talking about a minimum. Yes, you can. In fact, I think, although I can't recall off the top of my head, I think we already have some established minimums on a few things. So you can do that. So you could go with the statutory scheme that the memo talks about, 250 before 10 o'clock and 500 after and 750 for the others. Having said that, the one caveat I would have to say is that relies on a judge who you don't control actually enforcing that. And it is not unheard of for judges after the fact where nobody got hurt to say, well, that seems a little excessive. I'll enter the judgment for, let's say, $500 and suspend 400 of it. That's not uncommon at all. But absolutely, you can do this, and I would suggest that if this is an important message that you want to send, we as prosecutors will inform the judge when we bring these that it's important that we find this way, because it will definitely send the message to presumably the younger people who are doing it. This is an expensive choice that they make, and at least probably for the the 1 or 2 that get that level of fine, they probably won't be doing it next year. So that was a really long answer to a short question. The answer is yes.
No, but thank you. In the research, I found that it's similar to a parking ticket. If you're going to pay $25 because you violated our parking, they're going to pay that and call it a night, and they just do that for business. But if we increase the fine, especially for a first-time offense, and we'll, as I recommend down below, we'll have campaigns, and we'll do PSAs, press releases, we'll inform them, educate them, create partnerships, so everybody knows what the first-time offense is, and if we change it. And if we change it soon into late 2014 or early 2015, we'll have plenty of time to get out in front of that and educate the public. I have found that if we work with the homeowners association, churches, schools, local fire departments to educate them and discuss what really happens when there's an injury. I know most of us here are concerned about the injuries, and on page 2 of the memo, or it talks about some of the injuries, and it gives, they're staggering, and the cost for emergency room visits is staggering. So first off, I'll entertain any discussion on the first-time offense. What we found in our research was that a lot of our calls come in during the day, but the most irate ones come in after around 10 o'clock, and that's why I put in a 2-tier there. And we use 10 o'clock just because I feel that's fair, although people with newborns aren't going to want any, so just be aware of that. So any discussion on, and if the time or the amount, we as, or you as the board, give us direction. Obviously, this is our first discussion, and we'll come back and talk more about it. Yes, sir.
I wanted to clarify one more thing. I would anticipate what the chief is recommending is a $250 minimum, a $500 minimum, and a $750. In other words, in extreme circumstances, we could fine somebody before 10 o'clock $750. That is, the range just goes from 0 to 750 to 250 to 750, correct?
Correct.
Okay, just so we're clear. So you're not saying it costs $250 to light off fireworks. It costs as much as we can nail you for in the.
Up to 750
Up to 750 per offense.
per offense.
What's the current minimum?
0.
Oh.
I agree with the fee structure. I know after, even before the 4th of July, I was getting comments and calls from homeowners as far as complaining about the fireworks. And if I could find the guy that shot the firework off at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday morning, it'd be a lot bigger fine than $750
For him or you?
for both of us, because I would have killed him.
I had to go there.
There's a fine for that, too, yeah.
But I would agree with the fee structure.
Chief, how does a officer, and I think when Steve said teenagers, most of the ones I know, at least down around our area, these guys ain't teenagers. These are the guys that are, when I go to Wisconsin, my place up north, they're averaging fireworks May and June already, and people are buying them up there in Indiana, bringing them home early. They're getting set up for the whole month of July, or the whole part of June and July even. But how, because we've had people call in, I understand, and they go, it's coming from this block. And the guy goes and says, I think it's coming from your house, the officer said. And the guy says, well, I'm not sure it's mine or not. And how does he write the first ticket? In other words, if he leaves and it goes off again and he narrows it down and says, it's got to be one of these two houses, it's got to be you. I don't mind him writing a $250 ticket then. But for a guy that, like he's maybe a teenager does shoot one up and a guy walks up and goes, here's a $250 ticket for that. And the guy, I didn't even know there was an ordinance. You know, that type of thing. But some of them set up their complete fireworks. I mean, this thing's as big as goes for an hour. Those guys definitely have no problem. And repeat offenders, I don't care if it's even higher, because these are the guys you got to teach a lesson that they can't keep doing it.
Correct. And you're right. Most offenders are hard to catch. To go to court, to issue that ticket, we need a witness to say that the guy with the mustache and yellow and green shirt lit that firework off. And that person's got to be able to come to court and testify with us. If you don't have that, we can't issue the ticket. Now, there are ways we'll come up, we'll talk to the homeowner, and we'll try. Usually there's paper and everything around. It's usually pretty clear. If we can get a handle on the parties and the displays that are out west, they're spending thousands of dollars on those, and they drive to Michigan and Indiana and Wisconsin and Ohio, because Illinois has one of the strictest rules on fireworks, and the other states adjacent to us don't, and that's why they do. You're correct. But it's identifying the guy that's lighting the firework. Now, the one or two fireworks just come and go. We need to go after the people who have the party in the field.
Yeah, I agree. Usually there's a party when it's going on. I mean, it's not there's probably some dumb guy that'll set it off in his front yard where the policeman drive right up there and watch him getting ready to light the next bottle rocket. But one or two, I don't think affects, it's the guy that sets up the party and puts on a great display. That's the...
Steve is correct. A lot of parents sit in their chairs and let their teenagers light stuff off right in front of everybody. So it is a huge problem.
And I want to make sure that we don't, because we sit up here and we talk, we're not out there on the street, that we don't set our officers up to not be able to do this, and that we're just wasting our breath, because if this is a directive and it's a big concern for the board, it's a big concern for the citizens, I want to make sure, my neighbor called 911 on one because his dogs get real upset, and they wanted an address. No one has an address. Unless you're the house next door, you don't have an address. It's a half a block away. And he was told that without an exact address, they can't dispatch anyone. So does that become more of, we have unmarked, we have maybe officers walking the beat type of thing?
Yes.
You know?
Number 3 would, and also in a recommendation down below number 4, I would partner with code enforcement to have just special assignments it can't be a marked squad car in a uniform. You can see that's ineffective. And you're right, when we get the call, oh, it's across the river, or across the pond, or it's coming from over there, that doesn't help us. And they see us coming, and they have lookouts. So there are people out in front that tip everybody off. So we would have to, and we'll talk about that with my supervisors, how we do that. But you're right, it won't be patrol officers in full uniform and fully marked cars. That's ineffective.
We got some bicycles in the impound area we could utilize.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
After the last meeting, I spoke with Deputy Chief Sanders, and he actually brought up the idea of putting officers on bicycles and patrolling the neighborhoods with bicycles as a way to come up and not be so obvious that they're approaching where they'd be able to identify someone.
Yeah, that's correct.
Just to be the other side of the coin for a second, with most of our ordinances, our goal is compliance, not so much what the first-time fee is. You know, you could have somebody that's in town, has no idea that ours is $250 minimum versus I have no idea what any other town or where he's from. That's what his fee would be. So to me, raising the first-time offender to $250, you're going to fight that. We're probably going to end up having to fight that in court. They're going to be less likely to write the check for $250. I like the idea of a minimum if you're a multiple or repeat offender, because I think our goal here of this discussion would be to have compliance, safety of residents and that kind of thing, and also the nuisance it creates for residents that have children or dogs that don't enjoy that. So for me, the first-time minimum isn't my focus. My focus would be, do we currently enforce the ordinance that we have? And I know we're not going to go there and write a ticket for, $0 or $1. It's going to be 50 or 25 or whatever, and we're going to confiscate the rest that they have. So I think we've accomplished our goal in that they have nothing else to shoot off. We've charged them a fine that they will write the check for and mail into the village. We don't have to prosecute that. But if they do it again, they're going to get nailed, because then they know. And just wanted to kind of lay that out. I haven't really thought about that much before,
But now we have to catch them twice.
Well, and if I may, an example, we had a specific address identified this season, and the individual's neighbors were complaining. In fact, it was an outbreak on Facebook. And they said, didn't you get a fine for that last year? And he said, yeah, $50. So what? And I can't help thinking if it had been 500, he might not have been a repeat offender this year. But the fine did not discourage him at the $50 level. And God bless our police, they did catch him and they wrote the ticket like they're supposed to, but somehow the medicine wasn't strong enough.
Well, could a repeat offender be? If we ticket him last year and we ticket him again this year, does that not make him a repeat offender? I mean, that's absolutely, it doesn't have to be in the same season,
Correct.
right?
We-
Okay.
We weren't able to gather sufficient evidence this year to prosecute. And the only reason I know about it is because of the chatter about it from the neighbors who are fed up with it. And so on the presumption that we only catch a few of them, I think when we do catch one, we probably should display it as an example of what you don't want to have happen to you. To the end of having a higher ticketing rate, how would you feel about some kind of a reward system for information that leads to the arrest and conviction of someone?
I doubt if I'd turn a neighbor in for money, I'd turn him in so he'd shut the thing up so I'd go to bed. I think, and like you say, I think it's a repeat offender we're after. This guy's going to say, I'll pay one ticket, I don't care. But like Matt said, somebody come in new, I didn't see no advertising, I'm not going to pay this kind of fine, and I'll never do it again. Well, that's what we want out of you. And it's the repeat guy that goes, I'm going to do it again because I'm going to still have my party every year at the same time. Well, that's the guy we really, and that's probably the one that's doing it after 10 and making the most noise, got the most people mad at him. You hear it once in a while down at my end because it's on the river and it bounces. But it's not, they shoot one or two off and that's it. And I don't think any of my neighbors are going to call and say, I called them in, give me some money for it, because they're just happy the kid just shot one or two and is gone.
I guess we cut the chief off before he got through his list, too. But
At the risk of saying something that might be unpopular with the board, probably the most effective thing that you could do is if it bothered you, to walk over to your neighbor's house and knock on his door and tell him to stop lighting off fireworks because it's infringing upon your use or enjoyment of your property. Knock it off. If you felt that strongly about it.
If we
instead of
word it
call-
like that, then do we get caught?
No, because then you sound like a dork, but.
Okay, when I get hit in the head, I want to just make sure.
Yeah.
But I'm
Do
using my
we
words
call the police after we get punched in the face?
And that's a bigger fine. At any rate, instead of relying on the police officers to take them off the street and put them on bicycles to drive around to deal with nuisance problems that are a safety concern, seems like their time would be better spent patrolling our streets on the 4th of July to make sure we don't have drunk drivers. But at any rate, it's just a thought of mine. So I think we probably will talk about this again. I don't think we're ready to move forward with any recommendations. Let this simmer for a month or two, and then ask any questions, and we'll put it back on the agenda maybe sometime before the end of the year.
And I totally agree with you. That's what community policing is all about, is getting out there talking to your neighbor. Homeowners associations are listed here too. I think that's very important. They do hold, they can be very effective.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Your neighborhood watch guys, too.
Say, Chief was
Correct.
onto something with targeting guys wearing green and gold, though.
I know, I'm
think
not
that
going to
was-
change the blue and orange just to go in and
That'd
make
be
a
a good way to
complaint.
go.
All right, we'll move on. Oh, got all excited that we might be done, but.
No, one more.
Item C for discussion, which is the US 30 baseline road from 47 to 31. This is the Phase 1 study. With that, I will turn it over to Engineer Wallers for his report on this.
Just to remind the board, we have two Phase 1s that are happening in the community. As we mentioned earlier, there's one on Montgomery Road, but there also is another one on Route 30, essentially from Route 47 to about the Illinois 31 interchange. It stops at Albright. They've had several public meetings. The last public meeting was on July 30th, where they brought forward two different alternatives for the selected alternative. And Jeff, if you can maybe go to the next panel. So originally, you may remember, they had four alternatives for the cross-sections that were discussed. Two of those were rural sections. Section 1 and 2 had 200 and 180-foot right-of-way requirements. And the concern that we had, and the board, that we did discuss this with the board, was a concern that we had taken great lengths to establish landscape buffers along our new subdivisions, and that if we turned over a 200-foot right-of-way, we would lose all of those landscape buffers. So this time, coming forward, they did narrow it, and maybe go to the next, down to two alternatives, alternates 3 and 4. Alternate 3 has 160-foot right-of-way, and then the next one is alternate 4, which has 140-foot right-of-way. So the good news is they have heard our comments and have reduced the right-of-way width. From staff perspective, we don't think we're quite where we need to be yet. We've allowed for about 120-foot right-of-way through our newer subdivision areas, and then we've got substantial landscape buffers that are on both sides of that right-of-way. One of the things we're concerned with is that they're allowing for a 30-foot grass median. We think there's some room there that could be better served to give us buffer on our perimeter as opposed to the center of the right-of-way. So we would like IDOT to specifically look at reducing that 30-foot right-of-way, or 30-foot median width, because we're not certain that it adds anything really to the aesthetics of the corridor or the safety. When we need turn lanes, we can widen out to a wider right-of-way if we need it, but when we're just going through straight through traffic, not sure that 30-foot center median really gains as much, is our opinion. So what we're suggesting is, and the comment period is state would like comments by August 14th. So we've put together a draft letter that basically says we're not really in favor of alternates 3 or 4, but we'd like you to take a closer look and work with the village to perhaps, maybe there are other things that we can look at as well, but the glaring thing for us was the 30-foot center median. And we'd like them to at least take another look at that and say, okay, we can further narrow that down to preserve our landscape buffers. So before we send that letter and we would have it go out under the village president's signature, we wanted to discuss it with you, answer any questions, see if that was consistent with your thinking, and then if it is, we'd like concurrence to authorize the letter to be sent.
Does the state maintain that median then?
They would.
They'll be mowing it?
That would be their responsibility.
The standard
Well-
2 mows a season or something?
That was my question as well. What's the likelihood that that's an accurate drawing of what the median would look like?
Well, what they've told, well, I think we can, I don't know if we'll know that for sure. I would say it's optimistic at best, because what we do know is on the Route 30 widening that they're undergoing right now from Route 34 to Albright, they're only doing a grass median with no landscaping effectively. So I think that's what you would most likely expect. I think any landscaping that goes in the median would then be the responsibility of the village, and with that comes the obligation to maintain that. And that's not an inconsequential cost, so it's be something we'd have to think, I think, a lot about before we went down that road.
And if you'll recall, we had that same discussion before that went out to construction, that we decided it was not a cost we wanted to.
What's the median that's on the current project? Do you know what that is?
It's a lot narrower, and that's one of the things we pointed to.
10 or 12 feet?
I don't know the exact number, Trustee Marisak. We can get that to you, but we know it's a lot narrower because it fits within a 120-foot right-of-way. So we know that corridor is compacted and this section is compacted. I can bring that back.
I'm thinking that it's 10, 12 feet, or
Yeah,
it's not,
it's that order.
it's not 30.
It's order of magnitude of 12 to 16 feet. I just don't remember exactly what it is.
That's fine. You don't need to come back with that.
And that's what we pointed to originally when we've challenged this to begin with is, look, you've just built, you're in the process of building something now with a more compact right-of-way. And again, our emphasis has always been on preserving the investment we have in the perimeter landscaping that the village spent a great deal of energy trying to get. So we felt that was pretty important.
Certainly. I think we have been for this whole process very proactive in fighting for this road as it moves forward. If you didn't already highlight, could you highlight the steps in this process? So they're currently in phase 1. Do you know how much time roughly they have left, and then what goes on after that?
Yeah, okay, so right now, what they're hoping to do is wrap up their phase 1 in the winter of 2014, so at the end of basically this year, I would say before January. What they reported at the public meeting is that in the 2015 to 2020 multi-year plan, there is no funding for either phase 2 or phase 3. So phase 2 would be design and phase 3 would be construction. So they currently don't have funding for the project to go forward. That's the reality. Now, whether it will be funded or not, you know, they look at their 5-year plan every year. So, you know, next year they might include it or, you know, add it or whatever. So we don't know that. But once the phase 1 sets the budget and the geometry, when they go to phase 2, that's what they're going to follow. So that's the reason why we want to make sure that we get as much of our position accepted and part of the phase 1 as we can.
I think you and I had talked before, once they finish or finalize this phase 1, could they move forward with parts of this project as segments, like the intersection improvements at 30 and Orchard, or?
Right. And I think it's likely that they would do that, because I think there's elements of the corridor that would be a bigger benefit than the entire corridor. And I think the Orchard 30 intersection is a good example of that. And that's come up in the past and it's been discussed in the past. it's a costly piece of the puzzle because they have to replace the bridge on Blackberry Creek because they need to go at least 4 lanes to be able to have adequate area for the turning lanes that are needed and the stacking distance that we currently don't have.
And if memory serves, the night of the 31st, Orchard Road and Route 30 was closed because of an accident during the 4 to 7 period. Because I got hung up back on Orchard because it was backed up. I ended up going down 31. But yeah, it just, and I know 2 neighbors that actually noted that in their responses about the danger of the intersection there.
Okay. I'm not hearing any objections to sending this letter. I think it's, again, proactive for us to do this. I know that we've, Trustee Youngerman has been very vocal about advocating for the construction or the widening of this moving forward, so.
I'm going to bring that up actually in new and unfinished business. We'll talk about that briefly.
Okay. So in new or unfinished business today, does anybody have
I have an
anything?
item. Actually, I believe I've spoken with most, if not all, of the village board members. Last week, we've been trying to really see what we can do as a village to see if we can't decrease the amount of time and get into Phase 2 and Phase 3 of this Route 30 widening a little bit sooner. I think that it is one of the, it's going to be an economic driver for whatever develops out on the west side. I would like to see the village board pass a resolution in support of the widening, but I think that this goes beyond really just the village. I think that this is a regional thing, and this is going to help the region. I'd like to see us work on a resolution and be the first village to pass a resolution, but I'd like to see if we could get Sugar Grove and Yorkville, Oswego, even possibly Aurora and Plainfield on board with this, and then send this to our state representatives and state senators to see what we can do about bringing this project forward and getting this done in a quicker time frame. And in order to do that, I think that we would have to support, if those municipalities are going to support us, we're going to have to support them if Plainfield and Oswego want to widen 30 all the way down to Plainfield. I think that we have a better chance of getting this pulled forward and making this happen if they're seeing tens or if not hundreds of thousands of people who are being represented saying, hey, we need this, as opposed to just a village board that represents 20,000 people. This is one of those instances where I think that we've got to work together as a region to get this going. And we had attended, some of us had attended the Oswego Chamber Legislative, whatever it was, last
Committee.
week.
Committee.
What was it?
Committee.
Committee meeting last week, thank you. And where we get updates from our state senators and representatives and stuff. And I asked, is there anything that we can do as a board or as a village to get this project moved forward? And, you know, one of the senators there said, quite honestly, probably no, because IDOT is its own entity. But I believe that if we put pressure on our elected representatives and senators for the state, they're the ones that fund IDOT. So let's see what we can do. But I'd like to see us as a board in the next, one of the next 2 or 3 meetings pass a resolution in support of this. And hopefully we can get other municipalities on board as well.
I think Metro West would be a good idea too, because they're what you're talking about, and I'm sure Plainfield could say, you didn't help us with 59, why am I going to help you with 30? But at the same time, Metro West, you got all those things that are going to go together.
Even if we can shorten this duration by a couple years. You know, unfortunately, we have the deaths on the road. We have the traffic. The traffic that we have now according to, I believe, one of their own traffic studies, is greater than the traffic that we had in the area that's being constructed now. So there are definitely some changes that need to be made.
The other thing I would add, when we were at that meeting, there was support expressed from several Kendall County board members as well.
Everyone's in support of it. Nobody has any idea how it's going to be funded.
Well, it won't get funded until the phase one is done, right? They probably won't jump to put it in the planning until the phase one is done in 3 or 4 months, it sounds like. I'm not opposed to us having that resolution. I'm trying to remember, either when we were in Springfield or meetings that we've had up here, we've met with state legislators that asked us to put together a list of your most important projects. What's most important in Montgomery? If you had to, if you got to pick your top 5, what are they? And this might be in our top 5. It might be our top spot. But it's certainly probably not going to be Sugar Grove's top spot. They have their own needs and wants with 47 and 88, the interchange and that, and certainly Plainfield. But I think Oswego, Kendall County, Kane County, people who drive through this area at Orchard and 30 primarily feel the pain on this. So I think this is going to be something for us to focus on and keep our attention on as we move forward, but and certainly communicating with our state representatives and state senators. So, any other comments on that?
Are we ready to move on to another item?
What was that?
Are we ready?
He wants to talk something else.
I do. Were you done?
Yeah, I'm finished. Go.
For now.
Thank you, of course. My newer unfinished business, I had spoken with Engineer Wallers earlier this week and asked if he would have an update on the siren for us tonight.
Sure. So the siren installation, we're working on a couple of different items that are dragging out a little bit. The location on Dixon Road is on the east side of a 25-foot Fox Metro easement, which we've got permission to cross, but we have to build a driveway in order to get access to the new siren. So we're coordinating some construction costs for that construction of that driveway. And also we're working with ComEd to get power to the new siren. So those are taking a little longer than we expected, but we're hopeful that we'll have the siren in, by fall. I don't have an exact time, and I'll try to give you updates as we learn more with ComEd and our driveway project.
Thank you.
Equipment is actually in, though, which is the good news, because that was the longer lead time that we thought, anyway.
Yeah, who would have thought it would take this much time to actually get a siren and get a location?
You done?
Thank you. Yes, I'm done.
Okay.
Go
I
ahead.
got 2 quick things. Should be 2 quick questions. One, I've talked to a few of you about why, when you drive down Orchard, the median is no weeds, cut grass perfect, and then as soon as you get to Jericho and Montgomery on Orchard, it's weeds, and some of them are, 2 foot high because they're single. Is that Kane County's? Did you get an answer from Kane County why this? They just don't like past Jericho, or?
You're talking about as you're coming south, the Aurora section
Right.
is, my understanding is that the city of Aurora maintains
theirs.
rights of way north of Jericho. I
Okay.
want to verify that. And that
That's what I thought they might. Okay.
Highway mows the other ones. So
Kane
you're
County is
correct.
fast.
They
Okay.
don't have as frequent of a mowing schedule.
Okay, thank you. And the last question is when we had the what was it, night out meeting. I had Jeff, the treasurer of the homeowners association out there by Kimball Hill, asked about the road, and we all agreed the road is shot. Asked, I guess he's been being updated, but how are we doing on that bond? I think some of the people out there are worried that the street's going to heck, and that they might get charged, or we'll have to do it. And can you explain that a little better?
Sure, we're, right now, we've been going through a multi-year process, unfortunately, to try to make claim on these bonds, or to make the claim on the bonds. At this point, at this stage, and actually I have updated in detail the homeowners
Yeah, right.
association about all of this. And it wasn't a very fun email because it doesn't have a lot of upbeat aspects to it. But long and the short of it is that about 6 months ago, maybe more, we obtained a judgment against the bond company as to liability. Okay, that's important. That means that they are liable. The judge found that we are correct to make claim under the bond and that we're entitled to do that. So then the only question that's left is how much? In other words, how much do they owe or what do they have to perform? The road being the prime example, but there's other punch list items that need to be done as well. That is the subject of a trial because that's a highly factual thing, so we have to prove up our claim in front of the judge. That trial is set for January, and so you won't hear much updates until January. So that's all well and good. Here's where it gets less good. After that's done, presumably we win, and I have little doubt that we'll be able to prove that up, then the appeal process starts. And the appeal process can revisit everything that's happened so far, including liability questions. The bond company maintains it's not responsible for anything. I think that's nonsense, quite frankly, but nonetheless, they have the right to assert that in the appeal. So the appellate process could take a few years as well, unfortunately. So bottom line is, you know, the village could choose to make those improvements and take care of the road, but the risk you run by doing that is that you let the bonding company off the hook.
So even if we just fix the base, that would give them an opportunity to say, see, it's fixed, I don't need to pay.
Or you've at least potentially lost that base cost.
Right.
So our recommendation, as tough as it is to date, has been if you want to successfully obtain that money, the safest, best route is to not do the improvements that the bonding company are supposed to be doing.
I appreciate you keeping the homeowners association, 'cause he did say he's talked to you. There was other people that didn't get the message, I guess, and was talking to me about it too, so, thank you.
I actually met with their homeowners association 2 or 3 months ago, and we had the same discussions, and I kind of had given, I knew that you were going to, or you were in the process of getting them information, and I've said this before, that if for some reason something happens and as a trustee, I'm not going to vote to, the cost of, if something happened and the bonding company was innocent, I would, as a trustee, I wasn't going to vote to hold those homeowners responsible for the costs in that subdivision. It would be a burden that would be passed to the whole village. I'm not going to, like an SSA or anything like that. I know that was one of their concerns, and I had told them that there's no way I would ever do that.
Mike, real quick, kind of on that topic, could you or have somebody go down the streets in that subdivision that are binder, just to make sure that we don't have any hazard situations going into this fall, or winter is what I mean, before the plants close? Because if there is some patching that we have to do emergency, I mean, we're going to do it to make sure we have safe roads, so just wanted to, I'm sure that you guys are already doing that, but.
That's been our practice, to eliminate any hazards, so it's generally been pothole filling. We've done some tree removal, the trees that have died. Pretty minor costs, getting back to Attorney Anderson's discussion of risk and what we may give up, but we will do that.
Thank you.
Ken, the next time a developer comes to us with a bonding company attached to their proposal, can we remember the name of this company? And
Absolutely. Yeah, we do have the discretion of determining whether a bond is acceptable both in substance and form, and I can assure you, and I think Director Young will agree with me, that we know the long trail of this bonding company, and nobody associated with it will be issuing bonds in this village.
good.
Director Poobens, I had a resident ask me about Parkview. I'm not familiar with the area. There's a detention basin, something
Yes.
back in there. At some point, a vehicle had been in that pond and was pulled out, and they put wood in to help be able to get the vehicle out. And apparently that has never been cleaned up, and it hasn't been cleaned up in a while. So she was just wanted to make sure that we were aware and to have somebody come take a look at, there's some concrete areas that are covered in mud and sludge that, she said periodically, the village would come in and clean it up and kind of, and it hasn't happened for a while, so she was just,
A car was in the Parkview Basin, is what she's saying?
yeah.
And
Yeah, we did recover a stolen vehicle. We had, I believe that was mid last week, but I will go check to see if we left a mess there.
Okay.
I'll get with the chief. You can just tell me the location. We'll run over there, take care of it.
And then also, under the Route 30 bridge, and I'm not sure if this is village property, or there's a concrete pipe that the beavers build dams on, and we trap and remove. In fact, Ed and I spoke about it at the fest a little bit, because they trap the beavers and they take them somewhere else, where I'm sure those people don't want the beavers either. But it hasn't, I think it might be a ComEd easement area. It's kind of,
There's a viaduct, railroad viaduct at the outlet of the Route 30
yeah,
interchange.
they weren't sure if it was the railroad that comes in and kind of
No, we do that.
cleans that up, but it said, again, mentioned that, to make sure that it's on the list to check, because,
Citizen reported that to you?
I'm sorry?
A resident talked to you about that?
A business owner,
Business owner, all right.
yeah,
I know where you mean. We'll take care of that.
thank you.
I had one quick item that I had asked Justin, I think in the next couple of months, to put together kind of a synopsis of our pension system that we have for our unions, kind of our obligations going forward, how well they're funded, kind of an analysis of our own pension for the board. I figured it'd be good information for all of us to have. Just wanted to mention that.
The state of Illinois has an award for Senior Citizen of the Year. In fact, they have three in three different categories. One is education, educator, one is healthcare, social service related, and one is community service. And I believe that we have a resident, probably several, but one comes to mind in particular that might have a very good chance of winning that award, which I think would reflect well on our village, as well as kind of being a thank you from the many people that this person's activities have enriched or benefited. I looked through the criteria of the application, and Herschel Luckenbill fits that application requirement to a T. It's due on the 22nd of August. And I wondered if the board might agree that maybe the village might work with Herschel and submit an application to that effect and see if it brings good, positive vibrations to Montgomery and to Herschel.
He certainly has done a lot for the veteran community here in town, and his efforts with the cannon and everything else, and he certainly seems like he's worthy of some recognition, so I would support that.
I would agree with that.
Stan, is that related to the, what did he receive, the Veteran of the Month? Or is this a separate?
It's different, but I think because he just won Veteran of the Month, that would look pretty nice on his application.
Okay. Yeah, that was June when he.
Yeah, that came from the Department of Veterans Affairs, and this would come from the Department of Aging.
Okay, separate, okay. I got
Much as I hate to confess, I've begun to read their material.
I'm not on their
Well,
mailing list
I won't
yet.
share, but Herschel shared his age with me the other day, so I won't share his age.
It's not an extensive application, but it's something that it seems like we should agree to do together if it's something. we
And
want
that
to do.
has to come from his hometown, or?
I think it would be stronger if it did. It doesn't have
Who
to.
usually nominates them? Is this the villages usually do this?
Well, the truth is, I don't really know what the norm is. I don't think we've had a situation like this. It could be an individual, but then that individual would be tasked with doing a fair bit of homework and,
I'm amazed there's a Department of Aging. I had no idea.
it's,
You'll know soon enough.
it's been around a long time. if this were to be successful, I think we have others in the community that might warrant attention like that in the future too. And it's just good recognition for the strong volunteer group we have in this city.
Yeah, certainly. Do you want to look at that application to see if it comes from an individual or an entity?
I certainly can.
And then we can, you can start to fill it out, and we'll see what the holes are afterwards that
Okay.
need to be filled. Does that work?
Are we, if we're agreed, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Future meetings, Plan Commission for this week has been canceled. You have something?
If I could, very briefly.
Yeah.
We had sent information out on the strategic plan. It is included in the fiscal year 14-15 budget. And right now, the dates that we have planned for it are Friday, November 7th and Saturday, November 8th. I did not hear any negative response back on that, so we were planning on moving forward. If you have issues with those dates, please let me know as soon as possible, because we have other things lined up that we need to change if those are not okay.
Could you do the dates one more time, Justin?
It's Friday, November 7th and Saturday, November 8th.
It would be Friday evening and Saturday morning. Be like a 3 to 4 hour time period for each one.
Do we have executive session? Oh, good. It's on the agenda. Okay. You can see the rest of the meetings that we have there. We did cancel the committee of the whole meeting, and next village board meeting, August 25th. We do have executive session on the agenda today, but we do not have anything to discuss. So we will not go into executive session this evening. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Trustee Heinz.
Yay.
Trustee Youngerman.
Yes.
Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Yes?
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee.
Yep. We're adjourned. Thank you.
Awesome.
Now I have 9 to 9:30.